Welcome to the Innovation Conversation, a podcast about innovators, both in business and real life. Hosted by myself, Ricardo Pascual, and Harry McDonough. Another one of our sponsors is Social Town Marketing, your premier social media agency. You can find out more about them at socialtownmarketing.com. Today we talk with Sevan Jacobs, an entrepreneur who helps entrepreneurs. We're talking about some of the support systems and programs for founders he designed, mental health, and how to make entrepreneurship more inclusive. Hi, so today we got Sevan Jacobs, a founder, a leader, and a very, very well-known expert in anything to do with early stage startups. Sevan, welcome to our podcast.
Thank you so much, guys. You're too kind. Still, I would say very early in my journey, relatively, and really happy to be chatting with you about what I've learned so far and the great entrepreneurs and the community and all kinds of other great things. So excited to get into it.
I think me and Harry were talking with you before, and it's I don't think we ever had a guest that does so many things at the same time, all in the same area, and it's been quite tricky to say, hey, can you just summarize one of them and let's just focus on that one, because they're all very, very interesting.
Thank
you.
I
think the one that kind of stands out for me, and then Harry helped me out here, is the Colorintech. Where you actually contribute to helping people from a very diverse background to get into not only tech but also startups and to get funding. So can you tell us a bit more about that and then everything else and your whole life story, because it's absolutely fascinating.
Tell me your life story. No, great start. Cool. No, thanks for that introduction. I guess to give you a little bit of background, I've been in businesses and startups that I've been the kind of within the starting team for 5 or 6 years. My first business, we wasn't a startup, it was a service-based business, but really loved doing that. What we did is we supported organizations to connect with young people and learn from them, learn about what they really wanted, whether for the purposes of market research or a few other niche programs. That actually did pretty well up until COVID. We worked with the likes of Facebook, AKQA, Nike, Nando's, Superdry, Sports Direct, a bunch of big names, and loved it. But when COVID came around, we didn't really enjoy moving things online. We did run a few workshops online, for example. We didn't really like it. So we kind of, both as co-founders, decided to leave that behind. Fun side story is we've now kind of re-sparked that, rebranded it, and brought it back. We won't talk about that today. But that is interesting that sometimes things come back. But also over that journey, I was a part of 2 startups, one that failed, one that I decided to leave, that I think is still going, but I'm not sure if any of the original team is still there. I haven't kept up to track.
Happens a lot in startups, isn't it?
Exactly. And then decided at some point within that time frame to pivot into being what I call an operator in the space. So people who run programs, who support investors, who help entrepreneurs learn and grow. And then so I do that in a few different ways. I run some events and things like that. But primarily, as you mentioned, I am the startup and VC lead at a nonprofit called Colorintech. That was the primary vehicle in place where I first pivoted my career into the operator space, taking what I had learned, taking communities I was a part of, things I cared about, and bringing that to a group and a community to support them to succeed, and learning a lot about how to best support that community, especially the diverse and underrepresented community within, in this case, particularly within Europe, but so much of my community and my life is based around London, where we are now, right? Just learning about that, taking that and what we do there. And so to answer your question about Colorintech, we are a nonprofit organization supporting people from underrepresented backgrounds to get into tech and be successful in tech in whatever they want to do. But like I said, my primary role is as our startup lead. So what that means is helping entrepreneurs understand, what is going to help them increase their chances of success. Also helping new people or people interested in the tech entrepreneurship space get into it in the first place and do that well. But it also means we support other people, other stakeholders in the ecosystem. So I support VCs to connect with great entrepreneurs. And then again, through Colorintech, that's connecting to underrepresented entrepreneurs, help connect operators, other operators, whether it's programs, etc., to great talent as well. And lots of things learned there about what drives the investment ecosystem, leadership, and what helps entrepreneurs increase their chances of success. things that I kind of picked up on, learned myself, or learned through research just out of interest in the space over the years and really seeing it practically applied. So yeah, happy to chat about all of it.
Quite a lot of things there.
Well, where would you like to start? What would be most interesting to talk about?
I don't know, Harry. What do you think would be most interesting?
Well, I'd be quite interested to get an understanding of what you classify as underrepresented entrepreneur, and again, understanding why London. Are there any other regions outside of London, or is it just this specific?
I'll answer those questions in reverse. So we do work throughout Europe. Colorintech's mission is to make Europe the most inclusive tech hub in the world. Which is a very powerful and lofty mission.
Very strong message.
It is, and it's interesting to think about because often Europe is a bit behind on these things. If we think compared not just to the US, but also to China, even some other parts of Southeast Asia, and increasingly to some other regions or pockets of the world as well, Europe's generally quite slow to adopt new tech. I remember when in one of those startups I was a part of, our main thing was QR codes. And at the time, that was real weird to the British. And it was like...
Up until COVID, it was super weird. But then after COVID, it was like, we love QR codes.
Exactly. In the States, they'd been using it for years already. And now we see them as really simple and obvious. But you know what I mean? So that's just a super simple example of Europe's a bit slow sometimes. So we want to, yes, increase the tech entrepreneurship and innovation and speed of that, but also ensure it looks more representative of what this continent, in the case of the whole of Europe, actually looks like. Why London? That's actually a really interesting question. So yes, Colorintech works throughout Europe. So much of our community is based in the UK, and I do other things as an operator outside of Colorintech as well. And again, same thing, so much of that is in London. Why? For better or for worse, London is one of the best cities in the world for entrepreneurship. And that's stats, that's not just my bias. I do really like London as a city. But the stats really back that up. London is like number 3 for entrepreneurship in the world. That's after Silicon Valley, and I want to say number 2 is New York, but I need to double check that.
Probably more accessible as well, right?
Because London's quite accessible for Europe. It's also quite accessible for for certain regions, depending on, and this is when you get into the interesting, conversation of why, but essentially is down to colonial history. So unfortunately not great history, the really bad history there. But what modern day reality looks like is, the Commonwealth, quote unquote, so to speak, that you get a lot of migration to the UK from that. And with that comes so much incredible talent that unfortunately is often underrepresented in the stats. And the funding received and all kinds of things.
Just going on that point there, you mentioned that you're doing work in kind of Asia and Europe. What kind of the up and coming areas within those regions? And you mentioned about the Commonwealth as well. Is it kind of following that pattern?
So I think if we look at the global stage, I think it's less and less about these historic groupings or power structures, right? I think the Commonwealth has defined, in this case, the UK, up till this point, quite a lot. And I think increasingly it's going to look like global players. We're at a time, I don't know if this dates the recording or not, but we're at a time where the BRICS nations are becoming stronger than ever.
Very true.
And then so it's looking very much like, quote unquote, the West versus the BRICS. Now, I don't know if I love that narrative, but the point is that that's kind of what's being set up by the media, by, that's what things are looking like on the world stage. Where is the innovation going? A lot of the innovation is within those emerging markets. So to answer your question, what's looking most interesting? I would say there's nearer term and there's longer term. Nearer term, I think we're all very aware of the growth and explosion of education, of ability, and of population of South Asia, right? We're all quite aware. A lot of things, for example, get outsourced to India. A lot of tech gets outsourced to those regions, right? I think that is interesting, and I do think that trend will continue. I think a little bit longer term, Southeast Asia is looking really interesting. The main reason being they, for the same reason, have an exploding population. We delivered some stuff in Singapore earlier this year, actually, and Singapore is an incredible, very modern, it's a great tech hub. It was really interesting. It's
as big as London, isn't it? Because everyone kind of converges there.
everyone in the region converges there. I think population-wise, it's sitting about 5.5 million. Yeah. London's like 9, but if you think about it, its ecosystem is really interesting, really vibrant, really powerful. Something interesting is if you've got a B2C company out there, the strategy is have your hub in Singapore and then expand. You make your first market, not Singapore, make it Indonesia, because Indonesia has 200 million people, almost all of whom have a mobile phone, which is really powerful for certain types of businesses that, you know, where the consumer has a mobile phone. So that's a really interesting region as more and more of that region becomes technically literate, has access, etc. If we think long term, my eyes are on Africa. Right this second, unfortunately, very little of global investment funding goes to Africa. It's about 1% of global funding goes to Africa.
Which is really a shame, because
which is tiny.
If you look at the projections for 2050, the biggest countries are actually going to be the ones in Africa, or the ones with the biggest population growth.
Exactly.
And in terms of adoption of technology, I'm thinking Nigeria, for example, they missed a step in terms of personal computers, but now they've adopted mobile phones like no one else, and actually it's very well integrated into their daily lives, and everyone uses one. But above all, they need that to operate in their own space, more so than we have here in the UK overall, right? So it's impressive what they do over there.
You're absolutely right. The interesting thing about where that investment goes is so much of it goes to 4 major countries at the moment. So 75% of that 1% goes currently, I believe, to Nigeria, then Kenya, then Egypt, then South Africa. I believe in that order as of my last reading about it. And exactly what you're describing is exactly what's happening, where global population is on decline. What that means is less young people. Less young people, generally speaking, means less innovators. So much innovation comes from young people, and depending on your definition of young, mine is a little bit fluid, and these days tends to mean sometimes even anything under 50. So all of currently what we describe as Gen Z, millennials, that is globally on the decline. New birth is on the decline. If we think up to 2050, Africa is one of the only places, as a continent, as a whole continent, but particular countries as well, where population is on the increase and is expected to be sharply on the increase. You add to that the technical literacy, the adoption of tech, exactly as you mentioned, Africa is going to become a powerhouse. And I think is rightly so. So much of history has, especially the last few hundred years, has been essentially, you know, quote unquote Western countries taking resources from Africa, and Africa is now finally going to be taking some of it back. It's going to be really fascinating, and I'm really excited about all the innovation in the region, and for people I know there, how quickly they're doing incredible things.
So what advice would you give to someone from the, I'm not going to say developing country, because I don't think that's entirely correct.
Sure.
But for someone from Africa, for example, let's take Nigeria, in order to get investment, how would they even be on the radar of actually we are a valid company, we have this amazing product, we need to get some investors on board?
So I probably couldn't advise someone who's on the ground in that space, because being on the ground in any space is going to be a little bit different in context. So working in Europe, London is different to the rest of the UK, is different to Ireland, is different to Germany, where we have some community base, right? These are all, there's always different hurdles. On a high level, what I've noticed is that, unfortunately, a lot of that innovation is actually being taken out of Africa. It's that historic, people in the US or Europe who are saying, come here, we want you here. And actually, there's a resurgence of people going, either staying in those jurisdictions or money is going to those jurisdictions. And emerging fund managers, so what that means is, a small VC who has a small funder raising their first fund, saying we're only investing either in people based in Africa or people whose primary target market is in Africa. And that's really, really powerful. Finding those people can be a little bit of a challenge. One of the reasons is because Africa's VC or investment landscape, I should say investor more widely, is very young. 10 years ago, London's looked very different to how it does now.
It does,
It's been a big difference in 10 years. Give Africa another 10 years, and especially certain parts, Nigeria is one of the biggest, and it will look entirely different. There will be more funds, there will be more money, it will be a lot bigger than 1%, but that does require more people to be willing to see that value. A lot of that money is held up in LPs. So in a standard VC fund, you've got the investors, those are called GPs, but the actual money comes from a variety of different types of organization that exist to invest. So those are often pension funds or other similar organizations, often called family offices. Those are just holding funds for someone else. Eventually that makes its way back up to very rich people, but it's people who have lots of money trying to make money off of your money. Yeah. And that tends to drive so much of where the investment can go. If a fund says, I want to invest in Africa, they have to convince the LPs that it's not just because they believe in the region, it has to be backed by financials. And that is a good thing on one hand, but that leaves room for those LPs to be biased towards their beliefs. If it's some old dude who's only ever invested in white people in Europe or America, good luck convincing them to give you money to only invest in Africa. Unfortunately,
it's going to be hard, isn't it?
That's the challenge.
A question I have in Europe, and especially in London, how are you finding that conversation going? Do you think that it's harder for someone of a diverse background to get investment just because of their background, or are people more open? Because it's such a multicultural city, isn't it?
Yeah.
We meet tons of people from all over the world. We go out for a meal. It's always a different region. That's one of the things I love about London. Yeah. But how does that reflect in investment?
So,
can I just add on to one point there really quickly? There's always a term that's thrown around called soft landings, and sometimes when you go and try and raise investment, they tell you sometimes England or London is not always the best place to go. Sometimes it's always good to have a look in Europe or other funds. Just going on Ricardo's question there, how would you give recommendation or advice to any underrepresented founder to go out to international markets to receive their fund and then come back to London?
I mean, look, there's one really important thing I want to stress here is that my cultural background is quite diverse, but for all intents and purposes, we are three white men having this conversation.
I was just thinking about that, yeah.
and so what I'll say is whatever my experience is not my experience. It's me doing my best to listen to the founders that I'm here to serve and support. Yeah. But that will be different depending on who the founder is. So the fact is that, if you're an underrepresented founder, you're still much more likely to be invested in if you went to Oxford or Cambridge, right? And things like that. So nothing I will say will ever be the truth. It will be the closest interpretation I have found so far based on whatever listening I've been able to do. Based on that listening, the stats, unfortunately, do not tell us that being in a more diverse place makes you more likely to raise if you're from an underrepresented background. I love London's diversity, and I think on a micro level, that makes it easier to have a community around you. And one of the biggest pieces of feedback I get from underrepresented founders is they're less likely to have the community that can open those doors, whether it's, I know someone who introduced me to my first investor or my first client, which is also an incredibly important part of the equation, or anything else like that. But the fact is that what the stats show is that underrepresented founders receive a tiny fraction of the money. It sort of begs the question as well as what's the definition of an underrepresented founder, which I think you asked earlier. At Colorintech, it's fairly broad. Our only criteria tends to be they're from an ethnic minority background. There are lots of different measurements or metrics or whatever that do often get used as tick boxes, and I think that's a shame. But as a result of that, one of the interesting stats I came across recently is that about 94% of the money that goes to quote-unquote underrepresented founders goes to white women. So being a woman, that's a tick box, and that's all you need. Now, that doesn't mean women are underserved in this ecosystem, but it does show that, it does explain why it's something like less than 1% of funding goes to people from ethnic minority from black backgrounds specifically, I believe. And for black women, it is something really tiny. I can't remember now. I want to say 0.5% in the UK. And if you think the vast majority of those founders just statistically are going to be based in London or other major diverse hubs, you're in a diverse hub, but that's what the statistic is. That tells me that no, it doesn't make anywhere near enough of a difference. It might impact whether you're close enough to a community, which theoretically should have some impact, but clearly we're very far away from anything we'd call equity or an equitable situation. And so I guess we're in a space where people are learning that, where there are more managers, so diverse managers, or starting funds specifically for diverse peoples. And that's a start, because it often comes down to who's in charge of the money. That's where a lot of these things shift. I remember asking a diverse founder once, what do you think would make a difference to this ecosystem shifting? And one of the things he said was, well, look, if the investors don't look like me, they'll never believe in me. And it's fair.
That's a good, yeah.
So more VCs being from underrepresented backgrounds helps. The challenge is still convincing LPs, because at the end of the day, they're answerable to LPs on calls every month or whatever, on update calls every month. But these are slow shifts. If you think the 10-year difference the difference the last 10 years has made for London as an ecosystem, it might be yet another few years where the equitableness catches up. And unfortunately, the stats show that actually in times of a troubled economy like we have right now and have the last year or so, that actually gets even worse, because investors will double down in what they think are safer bets, quote unquote safer bets, which is a whole nother challenge in and of itself. That's essentially shows what bias is, right? What's an example of bias? Well, a safer bet is if you're a rich white kid from went to Cambridge or something. Unfortunately, that's what the stats are showing. So, a lot of change, a lot of shift is still needed, and it's not getting much better, unfortunately. I am hopeful, but we do need to be aware of what the world stage is looking like at the moment, because that affects what LPs will invest in as well. Yeah. So, I mean, hey, all this stuff could change radically in 5 years. The stats are showing very little change, unfortunately.
Just jump in there. There was some key words you mentioned about ecosystem, connectivity. I know we've gone on to quite a big topic around diversity and underrepresented groups as well, but I really want to kind of expand on what you mentioned about that connection. And from earlier conversations, you mentioned you run your own pitches, your own kind of groups where you kind of bring everybody together to help them build their own networks. It'd be quite interesting to see how did you come up with that idea, and kind of what's the reasoning behind it?
So where it actually all started for me was probably 2.5 to 3 years ago now. It's quite a while ago, where essentially I came across and started then actively doing more research into I guess I would describe it as what are the major contributing factors behind why entrepreneurs, all entrepreneurs, will fail. What leads to failure?
That is the question, isn't it?
And
that's what everyone wants to know.
I can give you a very high-level answer that distills what some of the main things are, but just to be very clear, what are some of the main things on that list? Number one was that there's no need for their idea. So product market fit just doesn't exist for a lot of ideas, unfortunately. You start breaking down a few more things, it ends up being, challenges with the team. Team's a really big one, so wrong co-founders falling out or whatever. And one of the big things is network. So it became very important to me to help entrepreneurs build a network of the most relevant people. But also, I guess this would have been during COVID, when community just was shot, like absolutely shot. An interesting stat, this is going to sound like a tangent, but I promise it's relevant. Something really interesting is, have you ever seen this graph? Some graph somewhere somehow has measured the number of people reporting that they feel lonely. Yeah. And if you look at from the 80s, it's a sharp upwards curve, and it got even sharper, unsurprisingly, during COVID.
Of course,
There's another similar graph which shows similar things, or a similar message or learning, the number of people that feel, or the average number of people that someone feels they can call upon in a time of crisis.
Ooh, that's a tricky one, especially for London, isn't it?
So
that is a very tricky
exactly.
one.
So if we think about, I can't remember how many years ago this would have been, but probably a couple of decades. The average number of people you could call was 3, right? Now the average. Well, guess what the average is now?
Probably 1.
I hope it's 1, but you look like it's not going to be 1. It's going to be lower than that.
It's actually 0.
Wow.
And in my brain, that's ridiculous, because for an average to be 0, the majority of those answers has to be 0 to outweigh the number of people that answered more than 0.
But that's so scary, isn't it? Because
it's
we're
terrifying.
super connected. We're hyper connected all the time.
So this has become
crazy.
A recent challenge I've had, and this is just a life challenge in general of what do we mean by connection? So
if I follow you on Instagram, that's not a connection.
We're not connected.
Or LinkedIn.
If we have a LinkedIn connection, we've bastardized the word connection to mean. Sorry, you need to cut that word out.
No, you can use that word. No, I'm just thinking out of my 7,000 connections on LinkedIn. How many
are you connected to?
Not even close to being.
Do you know what I mean? A stat I love is that human being can only manage about 150 true connections. So
which vary a lot.
Your 10,000 friends on Facebook, they're not all your friends.
No.
Just by by it's physically impossible.
Well, I think I have 143 friends on Facebook, and I keep that number very tight.
There you go. So your Facebook is clean, your LinkedIn isn't.
Yeah.
And what that reveals to me is we're living in a time of what I describe as hyper-individuality, hyper-individualism. We're all so separate, connected. Do you know how many businesses I see where I go, I know another founder of a business that's so similar, you should be on a co-founding team together.
Yeah.
But they go, but I'm the CEO, and I have my COO, and they're the CEO, and how would it work? And so someone's business would need to, egos are involved, we're separated. As a result, you get so much competition. As soon as you hear competition, we've been trained to go, but competition's a good thing. On a macro scale, not if you're wasting your time. Period. So to come back to your question, how did I get into essentially the space and the passion for bringing people together? It's because I'm concerned that we're living in a time where we're too individualistic and not collective or connected enough, truly connected. And number 2, because perhaps as a result of that, it's having a direct impact on our chances of success as entrepreneurs and in this ecosystem. So what do we do about it? We have to come together. Within that, there are some nuances, of course, but what you'll have noticed after COVID or during COVID is that lots of online spaces popped up, online communities, whatever.
Oh, Zoom exploded, right? Everyone was using Zoom,
but then also there were lots of community-based applications that came out. Coaches like myself, but a whole bunch of people from all kinds of businesses would build online communities. Some of them could be as simple as a LinkedIn or Facebook group. A lot of them were closed communities on platforms like Circle, Kajabi, a whole bunch of other alternatives, Podia, and you might have heard of some of these. If not, you can look them up. Some of them are still going strong, but I've spoken to founders who have actually said to me, after COVID, we shut these down because people didn't want to use them anymore, so they didn't. In other words, people got tired of online. Now, to me, that's actually a really positive signal. But were there enough people serving the ecosystem of people who wanted to come together? And I've noticed in the last year or so, a lot more of us have started up. So I run an event called Founders Live London. That's a free pitching event. It's free for founders to pitch. It's free for entrepreneurs, for anyone who wants to come through and attend. What's great about it is that the entrepreneurs actually get a package of support for pitching, and the audience votes for their winner, who gets then an increased package. Now, what's great about that is everyone's engaged, they're interested, and they're chatting, and therefore there's a chance for connection. Again, there's some nuances within that. So bringing people together to form a deep, meaningful connection requires a then another level or a slightly separate type of event, but at the very least, that can be a starting point. We do the same thing at Colorintech. We'll have events that have anywhere from 50 to 200 people at them. We actually also run a huge event within the organization, part of a separate team, but it's still run by the same organization, Colorintech, called Black Tech Fest, highlighting incredible diverse talent that we have in the tech ecosystem. And this year, I think we're expecting about 5,000 people to come through. That's a huge event. Huge. Now, again, is that a chance for connection? Arguably, I'd probably argue it's a chance for expanding your network of really amazing people that you then might choose to become connected to. That then becomes that reveals, I should say, my next challenge to entrepreneurs. Anyone listening to this, watching this, if we're living in a time where being so disconnected from each other and so individualistic and in our own little sometimes egotistic worlds in many ways, right? I'm doing this and it's about me and whatever, and that's causing challenges. What can you do to overcome that? Does it mean that you need to double down on the close group of other entrepreneurs in your network? Does it mean, in my case, what I'm doing is a lot of people will say, oh, you want to connect with me or chat to me, let's, jump on a Zoom call. Still. Yeah. And I'm like, I'd love to grab a coffee with you. I'll pay for it. I'll cover the coffee. But I want to see the person behind the Zoom call, behind the screen. And I wonder if we treated clients, investors, peers the same way or that kind of way more often, if we as a community or just entrepreneurs in general would have a greater success, at the very least within our local areas.
It's both a blessing and a curse, I think, when you meet people online versus face to face. A blessing because you can meet people from all over the world. A curse because sometimes you're stuck in a meeting with someone who you don't want to talk with, and
sure.
And you can be very, very rude with them, right? It's easy to
Sure.
be rude with them. But then when you're doing it face to face, you tend to ask more questions before dismissing someone completely. Whereas online, you're very quickly, very analytical.
Yeah.
If you're actually meeting someone face to face, okay, let me really get to know this person in front of me and really understand them instead of just brushing them off. Because you never know how well connected they are. That's probably on the back of your mind. But also, you don't want to be rude. You don't want to be disrespectful. You want to be a nice, friendly individual. So I completely agree with you. Face to face is the way to go, but it's hard to have someone commit to give their time face to face overall, isn't it?
So,
it's a
there's two things I'm going to say.
Yeah.
One quick, just to answer your question, is you do need to obviously just be aware of who you're speaking to. Are they the right people? Yeah. Some people will dismiss you outright. Generally speaking, if you ask for, can I grab you for a 20-minute coffee because I'd really love to pick your brain and get to know you as a person, people tend to respond well to that. It depends sometimes on the context. Yes, it can be challenging. Big number two, though, big, really important point I want to pull out. Didn't describe it or really intro it very much. One of the hats I wear is often as a coach for entrepreneurs. Now, that can be sometimes informal, but I do occasionally life coach entrepreneurs. Now, I've been trained in hypnotherapy. That sounds like a very big, scary word, but really what it means is I've been trained in neurology. I literally done it last week, 4 sessions. Really?
I kid you not, for fear of flying, which it's really funny because I have like 6,000 flying hours, which makes it even funnier.
Okay.
And I love the experience. It was so, came out super relaxed.
And so you came out, so I'm gonna venture a little guess at what's changed, right? So you were, if you had a fear of flying, what that probably meant is there was something happened in your body, whether it was anxiety, tension, where going on a plane, thinking about a plane, being on a plane, all of it was, what word would you use maybe?
It got me panic attacks actually. I literally had a panic attack and I was like, okay, I need to do something about this. And there's 2 ways you can go about this. You can go for, through meds. Yep. And meds for me did not work. I was actually, I think the first podcast we recorded, I took a Xanax the day before and I was completely gone.
Wow.
The energy was very, very low.
Interesting.
And then this one, we're kind of going completely off topic here, but...
No, I think this is really relevant. You'll see why. This is really relevant.
But the point of this is hypnotherapy really helped me to position things in the way they should have been positioned in the first place. And also for me, because I have a background in aviation, I didn't have a technical fear of the flying itself. Yeah. It was just the anxiety was bursting out in those little moments. Right. And it was completely out of control. So I could see the power that hypnotherapy has in a lot of areas of your life, especially when you're a founder, especially when you're struggling with either making connections or presenting your product or managing a group of people. It builds your confidence up. It's really fascinating.
I'm willing to bet, now that you've gone through that process, have you been on a plane since you've been to that process?
I haven't yet.
Just finished?
Not yet. Yeah, I literally just finished last week. So
What is the thought of getting on a plane? How does that make you feel?
Happy, oddly. It makes me feel. Actually, I'm excited about the idea of going traveling again.
I love that. So
Which
that
is bizarre, isn't it?
Well, not to me. It's not, but maybe because I've been trained in it. Is like that is not at all an uncommon reaction. It is reframing your relationship, the mental relationship you had, the psychological relationship you had with something that created very physical experiences, and reframing it completely. To the point of your neurology now being different. So what was happening before when you had those experiences and, in your own words, panic attack, what was happening was there was a trigger to think about it. So someone, for some people it's even as simple as mentioning, in this case, an airplane. And then there's a pathway in your brain. A neuron fires in your brain, goes down a certain pathway that leads to a response. Yep. And now what's happened is that pathway is shrunk, or in some cases after enough time even disappeared completely, and a new pathway has opened up. And that pathway is saying that this actually equals something else. And that something else is now, in this case, happiness and excitement. Yep. So that's kind of an explanation of what that is. Why do I want to pick this up? Because the words you used there were, it can be very hard to do. You use the word hard. And I have one of the most powerful reframes you can do. Reframing, just to be very clear, is when you...
I'm absolutely loving this. Go on.
There you go. Yeah. Reframing, just to be very clear, is when you you use or you see something in a certain light, you essentially frame it in a certain light, often using language. Almost all of this is to do with language, at least in this context. A reframe means you change the language to change the context or how you view that thing. We describe entrepreneurship as hard, as difficult, as there are a lot of problems. And almost all of those words are synonyms to those words. I will reframe and would encourage you to reframe as challenges. Why? Some really interesting research behind this, actually. Someone, somewhere, somehow, did a study that showed that if you take the exact same sentence, so you take a sentence that has the word problem in it, and you have someone repeat the exact same sentence, you change one word, you change the word problem to challenge, what happens is when they say the sentence that has the word problem in it, their blood pressure rises. When they say the sentence with challenge, it stays exactly the same. So something to keep in mind as an entrepreneur is that, and one of these things that leads to, in fact, it's not I wouldn't say it's one of the things that leads to the increased failure rate. I would say it's one of the things that underpins so many of the top things that lead to that increased failure rate, is us getting in our own way. Yeah. How are we getting in our own way? Well, the entrepreneurial ecosystem, the language we use, has done something fascinating where we've tried to, and in some cases have, framed hard work as a good thing. Yeah. But is your brain doing that? So, for example, I'm putting in all this hard work to build this business. You know, I'm working 20 hours a day, doing the graft, whatever it is. And that's been framed in the ecosystem and in the language we use in the startup world as being a good thing.
Absolute necessity. In fact, there's even parts of
exactly.
I think Chinese culture, they have the 996 culture where you work from 9 to 9, 6 days a week, which is absolutely crazy.
And I mean, and then on the other hand, you got 4-day work weeks, and which seem to be very productive. But anyway, what's interesting is, so we've got that as a framing in the ecosystem. Has your brain fully taken that as being a good thing? Theoretically, your brain could so deeply adopt that that your blood pressure doesn't rise when you hear the word hard work. And it genuinely energizes you and whatever. But the likelihood is, if you're using the word hard or problem to mean difficult, hard, problem, anywhere else in your life, your brain will see that as that. One of the simplest ways you can get out of your own way is by reframing these as challenges, as things that may take a lot of time. They may require a good amount of effort. Even effort is sometimes a challenging word. But these little simple reframes can make so much of a difference. And from my perspective, what I've noticed is they underpin so many of those top problems, or again, problems, top challenges, top causes, I should say, of that failure rate. Everything from challenge with co-founders, cool. That could easily be a relationship thing that is stemming from too many egos And that is
Happens
something
a lot,
that's you getting in your own way, or you framing a situation in an unhelpful way. Is there product market fit? I think it's a really fun place to be. What I always say to entrepreneurs who describe, oh, we're just in the early stages. I'm like, no, it's not that you're just in the early stages. It's that you are in a fun, exciting place. Why? You haven't raised money yet. You don't have customers that are waiting on the next release yet, whatever it is. So you have the space to play, to test, to learn. Mm-hmm. And that's a fantastic, fun, amazing, powerful place to be. It's a really simple reframe. But I wonder how many of those types of reframes or lack of such reframes are leading to an increased failure rate. Even what I've been saying, increased failure rate, I've started changing that to let's increase the success rate.
That's a good word. But as we come to the end of the podcast now, how can our audience find you? Do you have any websites, socials you want to shoot out there?
Sure. So my most active platform at the moment is my LinkedIn. On LinkedIn, I see all kinds of opportunities for programs, for events, interesting news I think people need to be aware of, grant funding, things people can apply to, whatever. So I'll post those on there. I do post some thought leadership stuff on there as well. So my LinkedIn is just my name, Seven Jacobs. Increasingly, I'm doing more stuff like this, content where I'm speaking to cool guys like you. And so I'm going to be increasingly putting that on my Instagram. That is also just my name, really helpfully. And then finally, if you want to learn more about me, including the work I do with Colorintech, but then also the other events I run, such as Founders Live London, me coaching entrepreneurs and other events I might be running in the not too distant future. Pretty much all of that you can find through my website, which, guess what, is also my name, is also just 7jacobs.com. So yeah, please do come find me, connect with me, happy to help. For underrepresented entrepreneurs, I actually run free office hours through Colorintech, so I can directly advise entrepreneurs with some time. So yeah, just come grab me and I'll see how I can help.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's been great chatting to you guys.
Thank you, Seven. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Cool.
All right.